right, welcome to New Madison, First Universalist. On this really warm and gonna get warmer, it's gonna get hot this week. So, but I think maybe they're talking about a little coolness after that. So, yep, the doors are open, the fans are on. That's our air conditioning. Well, the announcements. Let's see. I had some things from Mike. Derek is going to give us a call the 27th. I think that's a Monday. We're going to talk about we talked at board meeting. I think everybody's aware. We talked at board meeting about the future of the church as attendance and membership continues to dwindle. We're going to try and work with El Dorado. So Derek's going to kind of talk with us on that. We're just going to talk on the phone and lay it out, which I'm not really sure. I think he already knows what the situation is because we've talked about that. And then he'll be here in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Can't remember what. I'll give you the date later. He'll be here to preach, and after that, we'll have a little meeting, and we'll just sit down and discuss all the stuff on what's going on. What we discussed in board meeting was maybe a couple of our members would go to El Dorado's board meeting and attend their board meeting, and if they would be invited to come to ours, we need to see if that's all right with them. But the idea is to get closer as a community, as a church, and then discuss. And there's no hurry about this. We've got plenty of funds, and we can keep the building open forever. It's just a question of how many people want to come and whether they want to do it. So that's the kind of thing we have to discuss. The advantage is they have an elevator and they have air conditioning, so it kind of makes it more likely that we're going to go there. But I hate to give up the building. I mean, I'd like to see them volunteer to come here a little bit. So, there's Mike. So that's the only overhead announcement I've got, unless somebody has something else.
Thanks for working hard on that, really.
On what?
Thanks for working hard with the board. Thanks with the board. Work with them people, because that's where Paul and I want to go too.
Okay. And that's pretty much with our membership, everybody can be on the board. You don't have to be formally voted on or anything else. Just come to the meetings or put your opinion forth, because we're a community and that's what we want to be. All right, the prelude, I believe. Chalice lighting this morning is, and actually our topic has been all over the place. It started out with morals, and then morals kind of evolved into politics and ethics. And then I got the Greenville paper Saturday and looked at the police blotter, and that changed everything again. Plus we've had a interesting week at the lake. So that's what we're going to talk about. It all kind of revolves around morals, but it's kind of changed direction. Banned book chalice lighting. We light this challenge remembering the freedoms long established in our nation. Freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom from establishment of religion. We light this chalice honoring those who exemplify protecting those freedoms. Librarians, booksellers, teachers, authors, and journalists. We light this chalice so that by its light we may read all the books. Books with archaic language, books with offensive material, books which affirm the diversity of the human race, books which normalize our varied sexualities, books which share multidimensional perspectives of history. May we bask in the glow of its light this morning as we illuminate, brighten, and radiate because of the books we have read and the books we have yet to read. Our opening hymn is 101. Teach us to remember our history. Spirit of life, God of many names, source of hope, we come together at the end of another week or the beginning. Some worn down by the struggles of health, of home, or work. We may be a community that makes space for the sharing of joys and sorrows, angers and hopes, with grace and forbearance. In our nation's life, we pause this weekend to remember Native American lives lost from the European colonization on what is now our soil. Teach us to remember our history. Though we cannot make amends for what has come before, may we learn from those ways never to repeat them in our lives today. May we develop new ways of relating to neighbor and stranger without violence or coercion or deceit or greed. Mother of grace, help us find a sense of humility where we have privilege and strength where we face oppression. In our struggles, may we learn compassion. In our power, may we learn temperance. As a community of faith, may we be a safe harbor in a world that is often harsh toward difference. Challenge us to use our presence as a healing force for justice and equity, knowing that although we have come far in the civil rights struggles of our times, there are many people still left behind, and the work of building the beloved community is just as pressing as ever before. Joys and concerns? We're going to light 2 candles for Margaret. I think everybody, or maybe they didn't, they should have gotten an email from Margaret. I think Patrick's mother is the one that's in the hospital. Has anybody heard an update on that? So Margaret's had troubles in the last, she's had other parts of her family have had problems too. And this is just one more burden that she has to carry. So we want to remember Margaret, not just today, but every day in the struggles that she has. And let Margaret know that if there's anything we can do to help, we would be more than happy to take part in this. I debated asking her if she wanted, I think Derek would probably be willing to do a hospital visit. I'm not sure. Before I offer, we need to ask Derek. But he's the only trouble with Derek now is with his job at Bethany. He's pretty busy, and he's getting busier because you haven't seen him here once a Sunday a month. He's been missing that too. So I don't want to promise something that we can't deliver on. But sometimes a pastoral visit is very, very helpful. I even debated if Tara was in Dayton yesterday at a hospital visit to ask her, but I didn't have a chance to get a hold of Margaret to check, so that would not have been appropriate either. All right, other joys and concerns.
A joy that food is being delivered to those hungry people in the Palestine, and thanks to the U.S. is building the
causeway, yep.
Dock, transcending all political barriers, geographical barriers, and there's a will, there's a way, and let's hope that those very hungry and starving people are, once again, those food supplies are replenished. The other joy, pretty obvious to all of us, the joy of spring bounty. I don't know the history exactly, but I understand the peony, which is blooming so profusely and fragrant and gorgeous everywhere, is from China, I believe.
Yes.
Discovered originally from China. They flower so infrequently, and when they do, don't be appreciated. So I'd like to offer that as a joy, something maybe we take for granted as we drive around, but something that perhaps we shouldn't.
Yes, and the ants. Don't forget the ants.
Indeed.
All right. Anything else? I have where's my thing here? Oh, in Ukraine, we have our sunflowers. In Israel, then part of that candle will be for our troops, which are manning the causeway, the bridge, or the whatever the dock that is. They are not on land in Palestine, but they are like 100 feet off the land, and they are vulnerable to anybody shooting or sending rockets or anything else. So our troops are volunteering or being volunteered to help these people. We want to have a candle lit for their safety and their well-being. And just as a point of information, they are delivering about 150 truckloads a day through there. We need 500 truckloads a day to meet the need. And that's our children's story is going to kind of cover that. Another candle. How many of you saw this picture on the news? The upside down American flag has come to be, basically it's used for a sign of distress. It became kind of tied into the January 6th thing after the January 6th resurrection or insurrection. When those people were arrested, the conservatives started flying the upside down American flag. Does anybody know what house this is at? Justice Samuel Alito, a Supreme Court justice, is flying an upside down American flag in support of the January 6th rioters. And of course, Justice Alito says, my wife did that. I have no control over my wife. And that is true. She is an independent person.
And she was distressed because her neighbors were posting signs that distressed her greatly, and she felt the need to do that.
Yes.
And I'm sure that several individuals in America will say that had nothing to do with any rulings on the Supreme Court.
Nothing to do whatsoever. And it was all not just for a day, it was up for many, many days.
It is down now, probably not likely to return in that state.
And we'll have to see, so. And that's not the only problem with the Supreme Court. We know of another justice who's had his hand out and been taking. So anyway, we're into politics and ethics. That's kind of where we started, and we kind of took off from there. Also, we're lighting a candle, and I'll kind of go into that a little bit later. For all those kind of locked in a position of pain and suffering by their behavior, which is not very appropriate, but they can't seem to get out of that trap. It happens to many, many people, but it happened to the couple people that I'll tell you about today, which I've told you about before. And I appreciate and I thank you for allowing me to process what goes on in my life up in front of you. So, all right. Anything else? Greenville, I guess.
Let's light a candle for Dolly, because she is underway in her 5-month cruise around the world and here and there. So let's, even though we wished her a nice bon voyage last week, let's light a candle for her as well. Things continue well for her.
Travel mercies for Dolly, and hope she enjoys her trip and brings back lots and lots of pictures. And I told her if she doesn't want to take the pictures, somebody else will. They'll provide them for her. Also, we'll light the candle for Cecil.
Yes.
I need to call her after church. We'll find out if she wants to come. If she can't come, we've kind of made arrangements to have Uber bring her up, and I'll take her back, or we can take turns taking her back home. So it's only going to cost us $35 or $40 to get her picked up and brought up here. I think Cecil deserves our support if she wants to come to church. We're not going to force her, but if she wants to come, I want to make that possible for her. All right, we went from the flag to, oh, did I lose it? Somehow I lost my children's story, so I'm going to have to tell you about it. It was in there before. The children's story is, if you saw it on the news, it was on CBS and other stories, it is an actual depiction of Israeli settlers at the entrance from Egypt, where the supplies come in from Egypt to Palestine. They stopped the trucks. That's one reason why there's no supplies in Palestine now. They stopped the trucks, threw all the supplies onto the ground, demolished them, damaged them, set fire to the trucks. This has been going on and on and on. And the Israeli settlers are basically stopping food aid from getting to the Palestinians. This is not the Israeli population. This is the fundamentalist Israeli population. Remember a couple weeks ago, or maybe a month ago, I showed you the video of the settler who came down and destroyed the Palestinian farmers and shot at the Palestinian farmers and threatened the reporter who was there that he had to leave or they would shoot him. The military knows this is going on and they do not do anything about it. The pictures are pretty dramatic of them stopping these giant semi-trucks and throwing off pallets after pallet after pallet of food and water and health supplies, cleaning supplies, and the Israeli army standing by and watching them do that. Their position is they are doing this because they want the hostages released, and the trade is 30,000 or 100,000 or 1 million Palestinians will starve unless the hostages are released. You can take that and put it into your equation of what's fair and what's not fair, what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. But these are women and children that are being starved to death. And if you noticed on the news, they found 4 more hostages, the bodies of 4 more hostages last week. So it is a terrible situation. Both sides have come to problems, but neither side has the right to inflict that kind of damage on the other side. That would be kind of my opinion. All right, let's go on to presentation. The 3 hardest tasks in the world are neither physically or intellectually hard. They are moral acts. To return love for hate, to include the excluded, and to say, I was wrong. The 3 hardest things to do is return love for hate, include the excluded, and say, I was wrong. This kind of all came about because most of you, I think if you live in this area, get the Daily Advocate, which came out on Saturday. If you looked at the police blotter, there was an article which really struck me. It's called a welfare check. 12:04 a.m. officers were dispatched to the 700 block of Schweitzer in reference to a welfare check for an 8-year-old male with autism who'd been left alone at home by his mother, according to the caller. The caller stated the mother left the child at home alone to go to the bar. Officers knocked on the door with no response, but could see a TV on upstairs with the curtains open. About 12:36 a.m., this is after midnight, the mom pulled into the driveway and asked why they were at her residence and told them all to leave. She refused to speak to the officers and ignored all orders to stop. She was told she wasn't free to leave, and she opened the door to the house and attempted to shut it in the officer's face. She was advised she needed to turn around and place her hands behind her back as to be detained. This is actually off the police report, which is why it reads like a police report. And she refused. She was detained and brought outside. She told officers her son was in Piqua with the father, and she provided his phone number. She said no one was in the house, but the officers advised her they knew someone was inside due to the curtains being opened and closed. She again stated there was no one inside. The officers made contact with the father of 2 of her children. However, he was not the father of the child in question and did not have him. She advised he was with her mother in Gettysburg before refusing to give the officers her mother's number. Prosecutor Jim Bennett was contacted, and he stated that due to the circumstances and to check the welfare of the child, the officers could make entry into the house to check on the child and to ensure he is at the residence and is okay. The mom was placed in the back of the patrol car before officers entered the house. Located upstairs in the same room where the curtains had been shut was a small child who was identified as the boy they had gotten a call about. He was lying on a mattress on the floor, surrounded and covered with trash. The room was very hot. He appeared to be visibly sweating. There was no airflow or fan on in the room, and the windows were shut. The boy said his mom was supposed to be home in the morning. The grandmother was contacted, and she was also very uncooperative. However, she took custody of the boy for the night. Child Protective Services was contacted and made aware of the situation. Photos were taken of the living conditions, and on the call, the CPS employee said that she was aware of who the child was. The mom was asked about the child's medication and did not take them for the night before later changing her answer. Kara McDonald was transported to the jail and charged with endangering children and obstructing official business. The caller was contacted after the incident and made officers aware of another incident shortly prior to McConnell leaving her son home alone for an entire weekend while she went on vacation. This is Greenville, but it's Richmond, it's Indianapolis, it's Columbus, it's every town you can think of, and I'm sure it's probably happening in New Madison. The one thing that really struck me about that was it's like an epidemic in this country, and it's growing worse and worse, the epidemic of denial. Do you remember when you were a kid, when you were growing up, if you were caught doing something wrong, you hung your head in shame and said, I'm sorry, I won't do it again. But you admitted what you did. What is the common reaction now? Denial. I didn't do it. I didn't do it. We have you on film. We have you on video doing it. We have you recorded saying it. I didn't do it. I didn't do it. And that brings me to our other problem. This weekend, my kids were there. My daughter and son-in-law are moving to Maryland for a new job, so this was their last weekend at home until Christmas probably. And my son and his wife came over. About halfway through the afternoon, we get a knock at the door. The sheriff's department is there. The neighbor's house, Rob, who is the house I own, and he's renting from me. And Rob, actually I forgot to light a candle for Rob. Rob's in the nursing home. He fell and broke 3 cervical vertebrae in his neck, had surgery at Miami Valley, and is now in the nursing home for rehab for at least a week. So his house is empty but locked up. We noticed 3 days ago that one of the windows was open. So we went in and secured the window and found a bunch of clothes in the washer, like girls' clothes. Like, what do you suppose they came from? We go over and ask. Oh, they're not our clothes. We didn't break into his house. So yesterday the sheriff comes. His brother had been there. We locked all the windows. We put a stick of wood in all the windows so they couldn't be pried up. Because what they did, they pried the window up and broke the little plastic lock on it. So we put a stick of wood in so they couldn't do that. So what they did this time was they took the pry bar out of my truck, jimmied the back door and kicked it in. There's a big footprint on the back door. And the washer and the dryer are full of clothes again, girls' clothes. So the brother called the sheriff, and we told him who was in the cottage or who was in the shed, these girls that I've talked to you about before. And the girl who was the perpetrator, probably the one who I've had the trouble with, wasn't there. And they asked the other one and went through all of them. No, we didn't do it. We don't know anything about it. Well, whose clothes are these? Never saw them before, et cetera, et cetera. But they did find her later in the day, and now she's in jail. And she's in jail because, remember I told you last week or the week before, she had been stopped for a warrant from driving without a license or without insurance or something, and that she'd had a seizure and was taken to the hospital, and they released her on her own recognizance because our county won't pay for your hospital bill. It turns out that was a lie too. It turns out when she went to the hospital, she just kited out the door and ran away, disappeared. So she wasn't released, she escaped. So I haven't had a list of all the things that are going to be there, but she's going to be in jail for a while, which kind of solves my problem if I can get the other one gone. But it all kind of goes into the whole thinking thing about every time we ask, did you go in there and break into his house? Did you use my tools? Did you whatever? Did you do this? Did you do that? No, it completely denies it. They've broken into my cottage before, and I found stuff like a drill and tools and things that they were using that were in my house. How did they get here? We found them outside. Somebody else must have stolen them and left them outside. Denial, denial, denial. And I don't understand, and I'm trying to understand, and that is the problem that faces all of us, that faces a society, is how to get people who refuse to admit what they've done and continue to do. I mean, they're not hardened criminals as far as I can tell, most of these people. And this girl, she's worked for me before. She does good work when she works. You just can't trust her to be honest about anything. So what is that sensation that whatever you see, I can pick up and use, and it doesn't make any difference? But if you steal something from them, I'm sure they would be very upset. So anyway, that's kind of where we went around today. So, guilt. That's all of us, or what I consider normal people, have that sense that you do something wrong, and there's 4 or 5 reasons you can feel guilt. Something you did that was wrong, you can feel guilty for. Something you wanted to do, and some people want to do something and you still feel guilty because you feel guilty because you wanted to do something that you knew was wrong. Something that you think you did, which I always found was very interesting. Sometimes it's something that you said, but you really didn't say, or it's something that you wished you had said, but you didn't say, but it's something that you thought you did, but you didn't do, but you still feel guilty about it, even though you didn't do it. Or, and related to that one is, you didn't do enough to help someone. Sometimes you come across a situation, you see a cat in the road who's been hit, or a dog that you obviously is a stray, it's wandering up and down the road, it stops and looks at you. Can you stop and help me? And you drive by. I feel guilty every time I do that. Sometimes I do go around, turn around and go back and pick him up and take him to the pound. But I can't do that all the time. Sometimes there's traffic and sometimes you're in a hurry. But I still feel guilty for leaving that dog out there. And then there is survivor guilt. This is mostly military or people who have been in accidents. There'll be a plane crash and everybody will be killed but 5 or 6 people. Sometimes they are plagued with survivor guilt. Why was I spared and everyone else died? We always turn to religion for that, and sometimes that helps and sometimes it doesn't. The problem with that, if you think it through, is why did God spare me, but why did God kill all these other people? What did they do wrong? So you have to be careful when you tread down that road. So, what do we do with all of these problems for people who don't fit into society? These are people that in the old days, we had the frontier. You had different continents that weren't settled, or when we settled the United States, we had the far west, which was empty. People who were malcontents, they were hyper-independent. They were people who just couldn't get along with other people. They didn't have to stay with other people. They could pack up their belongings and move someplace where there were no other people. And then society kind of formed and basically began again with all these people, which is kind of why the Wild West has that history of being called the Wild West. Because it was settled by wild people who couldn't get along with regular people. They wanted to change. They wanted someplace where they make their own rules. The strange thing is, and maybe the reassuring thing is, that even in the Wild West, the same rules began to apply. In other words, what towns were the first towns to pass laws that says you can't carry an open gun in town? It wasn't New York City, it wasn't Pennsylvania, it wasn't Ohio, it was Wild West. It was Laramie, it was Dodge. It was all the city, and almost every city out west had that rule that no carrying of open weapons in town because they knew how dangerous it was. When the cowboys came in for a good time, they didn't want them to be drunk and armed at the same time. So we're kind of going backwards from that. So, now, where do all these people go? They go under bridges. They go into alleys, empty alleys. They go into derelict buildings. That is the space where nobody controls anything. But all these spaces are right next to the spaces that we live in. Or they go in somebody's shed who's nice enough to let them live there. The Conestoga wagon is now a shopping cart, and their justice is homegrown. They don't fit in society. They don't recognize the justice of society. They break the rules with impunity, and I don't understand. Again, if you know the sheriff's department is looking for you, you know you're going to run across the sheriff's deputy sooner or later. One of the other guys who works with me, had his license suspended for I don't know what reason originally, but then it was suspended multiple times because they caught him driving without his license. He didn't show up for work Friday, and I said, how come he didn't show up for work? And he says, they caught me driving without my license again. So now they're watching him really close, so now I have to go get him anytime he wants to work. So, which is probably a benefit to me because now I'll know exactly what time he starts and exactly what time he leaves instead of the hours that he makes up. So, I have such fun with what I do. So. All right, on the topic of morality, let's expand that out a little bit. The common belief is that morality and religion are inextricably bound together. Is that true? What do you think? First of all, many highly secular societies in the world today have the lowest belief in God, such as Sweden, Japan, Netherlands, are among the safest, most well-functioning, and most humane societies on earth, which the lowest murder rates, the lowest violent crime rates, and the lowest infant mortality rates, the lowest child abuse rates, the lowest incarceration rates. Everything you can measure is better in these countries who have a low population, low percentage of the population that's religious. Think about the opposite. The nations with the highest rates of corruption, murder, inequality, political repression, and violence, where would that be? Central America, South America, Colombia, El Salvador, even Jamaica are among the most religious. Granted, this is a correlation, and as we all know, correlation is not causation. But there is a correlation, it is related. So the claim that only God can provide morals and values for civilization is, on its face, blatantly not true. Secondly, think about the United States. The states with the highest levels of belief in God, Louisiana, Arkansas, Alabama, have higher rates of crime, other social pathologies than the states with the lower levels of belief in crime, Vermont, Massachusetts, and Oregon. If a popular belief in God kept people moral and widespread, atheism led to immorality, then we would expect to see the opposite correlation. We would find that the states and nations where God belief is strong would be moral and low levels of violence, and the other countries and states would be the opposite. That is not the way it is. We can even look at our own recent history. In the past 50 years, religion has weakened significantly in the United States, and we've gone through that. The percentage of believers is lower and lower. The percentage of churches that are closing is higher and higher, as we are an example. And yet, the crime rate has gone down, simultaneously gone down. In the last 50 years, there is, no matter what you hear on the conservative publishing and media, crime, violent crime is down. Even property crime is down in general, not in every case, but in general. Finally, at the individual level, secular people are in fact less likely to commit violent crimes than religious people. How do we know this? Atheists are underrepresented in prison. In fact, atheists make up less than 0.1% of federal prison inmates in the United States. Furthermore, agnostics and atheists exhibit lower levels of racism, prejudice than their more God-believing peers. Think about what you see on the news, and think about what you see in published. Who are the people who are the most racist? Who are the people who are the most intolerant of gays, race, immigrants, anybody else? They will tend to be the most religious people. Secular individuals are much more likely to support helping refugees, death with dignity, as well as the rights of non-traditional couples to have and adopt children. Secular humanists are also significantly less likely to support the use of torture than their religious peers. It seems that neither societies nor individuals need God in order to be moral. They simply need compassion, empathy, and an active desire to alleviate suffering. So, why do good people do bad things? There are a bunch of justifications for doing the wrong thing. One justification is, I got away with it once or twice, so I'm going to go ahead and keep doing it. Sometimes you borrow paper clips or paper or stamps from the office or from someplace. You pick up a quarter that somebody has dropped and you saw them drop it, but you keep it. As you do that more and more, then it gets easier to add more and more to it. If you took paper clips or pencils the first time, then you take a book of stamps or a sheet of stamps, or you take maybe an office chair or something that you don't think they want. It's easier once you get away with something to keep on doing it. Another one is other people are doing far worse things than I am. And that is always a good justification. The people you work with are doing things, and you're saying, well, what I'm doing is much less than what they're doing, so you can justify it with that. The third one is a fear of missing out. If you see people succeeding with unethical behavior, it becomes pretty obvious that to keep up, in other words, if at work people are lying or stabbing people in the back or taking congratulations and credit for other people's work, pretty soon it looks like the only way you're going to get ahead is to do the same thing. The temptation is there to become unethical. And the fourth thing that justifies it, I make up for my bad deeds with good deeds. Sometimes you do and you do feel guilty for something, so you do something good to make up for it. I put more money in the plate. I stopped and gave money to a beggar on the intersection of 40 and 121 or whatever. And that justifies what you've done in your mind. The end justifies the means. This is the big one. I voted for this politician because he promised to do something that I want done. I voted for this politician who is obviously not a moral person, who is obviously not an ethical person. I realize that, and I would not want him teaching Sunday school to my kids, but he promised to appoint judges or outlaw things that I wanted outlawed. The end justifies the means. If someone has good intentions behind their unethical behavior, they might think it's okay. If they want to steal to support a charity organization or help their child, it doesn't work. And yet these people are completely blind. I'll never forget 2 Corinthians. I'm sure all of you have heard that. When our ex-president went to Liberty University, stood up in front of a whole university of Bible students and talked about his favorite book was the book that he wrote, Art of the Deal, but that was his second favorite book. His favorite book was the Bible, and then the second favorite book was Art of the Deal, and then he went on to quote 2 Corinthians. Nobody has ever heard of 2 Corinthians. Anybody who's even heard about a Bible knows that 2 Corinthians is the way you talk about Corinthians, the second book of Paul. So 2 Corinthians kind of revealed what was actually going on. Okay, let's say that someone's facing a big bill for something they see it's not their fault. They got a raw deal from a company they work for. It's okay to take advantage of the company in another place. In other words, the company screwed me once, so I'm going to get them back. You go to Walmart or someplace and they charge you extra for something, or you took something home and it broke instantly and you didn't get your money back. So the next time you get a chance to slip something in your basket, they owe it to me. I'm not going to pay for this. That's an excuse a lot of people use. Another one is the person's moral line keeps shifting. Your morality kind of changes as you go along. Sometimes things that are not bad, 1 or 2 things, then they justify that. And that's kind of like taking stamps. You start out by taking 1 or 2 stamps on the letter you need to mail, and then you take 4 or 5, and then pretty soon you're taking the whole book. So that's kind of the whole outline of the behavior, the immoral behavior. And I think we need to run. I got more stuff here, but I'm not going to go into it. What I want to have you think about and maybe make suggestions, or if you can come up with a solution which would benefit all of us. How do we talk to people? How do we work with people who don't seem to have any concept of right or wrong, who deny? How do we work with people who accept other people in that behavior? How do we work with people who say the end justifies the means? I don't believe in abortion, and I will support anything that stops abortion. I don't care what it is, and I don't care how they do it, as long as it stops it. And you can see the rules that are being passed now. They're proposing rules to have a pregnancy registry. It's almost like the Red Hood, or whatever, the Red Cape, or whatever that book was. Any woman who's pregnant registers, the doctor registers them as being pregnant, and then they're observed all the way through their pregnancy. And if it's terminated along the way, then they're investigated to see why the pregnancy was terminated. Women have already had trouble, whoever having miscarriages and can't get mifepristone, can't get the pills to help complete their miscarriage. The miscarriage has already started. They're being forced to endure it until their actual life is in danger. It's crazy. It's just truly crazy. So, didn't have a good roundup there, but and I apologize. I seem to be on my white horse all the time about the ills of society. But please give me another subject, a benign subject, and I'd be more than happy to talk on that.
Tim, when you were quoting, or not really quoting, but were you citing some statistics about secular humanists and what they thought versus
Yes.
the other? What was the source of that survey, or is it just the author in the works that you used?
Yeah, this was just the author, and this was an article in, I can't remember the name, it's I think it was Psychology Today is where I found that article. And what I do is the Google search on morality, and then wherever it takes me is kind of where I go. And we can independently do some research on that. But I know the problem with some of these statistics is you have to think about them a little bit, because there's not many atheists in prison, but there's not many atheists, period. And probably nobody, when they go to prison, people who go to prison are not the kind of person who are ethically aware of what's going on. So if they ask you your religion, how many people, even if they don't believe in God and would be technically considered an atheist, are going to mark atheist on the box? They're not going to do that. So that's the reason only 0.1% of people in prison are atheists because only 1/10 of 1% are educated enough to mark atheist in the box. I mean, it's not because there are no people there, because we know there's lots of people in prison, probably a majority who don't believe in God. So that's a little misleading. And I'm not trying to say any of these statistics are foolproof or ironclad. It's just something that struck me as kind of interesting to think about. And the most interesting one was the one I started out with, which was if you look at the nations which support people the most, they are the least religious. If you look at the states which have the biggest problem, they are the most religious, which is kind of an interesting confluence of events, kind of an interesting look at the way the human mind works. And the correlation between conservatism and religion is becoming more and more, it's becoming stronger all the time. And that is not to say there's something wrong with religion, because there's not, but sometimes there's something wrong with the practice of religion. And we go through this all the time. Every religion has its good adherents and its bad adherents. Every religion has its positive people and negative people. The thing is, you can't ignore the negative and pretend it doesn't exist. You have to try and correct the negative. You have to try and educate the negative to become positive. Everybody has the possibility of being positive. Even these girls, for all their denial and for all their breaking and entering, when you talk to them, they come across like normal people. And they've got a dog, they've got cats, they take good care of their animals, they care about their animals. They don't care enough because they didn't get them licensed and they didn't get them vaccinated, but they do care about them. And I offer to take them to the clinic in Greenville where you can get your dog vaccinated for like $10. I offer to take them to that. Now they couldn't be bothered to do that. So, and that's part of the whole thing, the consequences. They can't look into the future. And that's part of what you do as a normal human being with normal intelligence. If you look and say, if I do this, what's going to happen? If I don't do this, what's going to happen? If I don't get my dog vaccinated for heartworm, to get the heartworm heredity, he's going to get heartworm and he's going to die. So I need to get that done. If you just ignore that, and then your dog dies, you say that's just part of what life is about. It's a short term, and maybe that's something I hadn't thought about, but maybe that's they're bound up, they're tied into a short-term existence. One day to the next day is all that counts. If I have enough food today and a place to sleep today, if my shopping cart is full and I'm warm, then that's all that counts. I'm not worried about tomorrow. So when somebody talks to me about going to school or getting a driver's license or applying for a job, I can't think that far ahead. Maybe that's, I don't know what, maybe that's a genetic defect. I don't know, something to think about, because that seems to be the common problem.
A lot of psychological theories are built around that concept. It's two things: the inability to anticipate consequences and the inability to delay gratification.
Delayed gratification.
And those two major premises are the basis for a lot of psychological constructs, at least what I've read. I'm not a psychologist.
I think you've hit, I think the delayed gratification, the more I really think that's it, because if you give them, if they've worked for 2 hours and they earn $20, I'll take them to Walmart. They'll buy Ben and Jerry's, or what's the most expensive ice cream? You can get those little tiny cups for $4. Haagen-Dazs. They'll buy Haagen-Dazs for $4. And that's how you can get a gallon of ice cream for $4. And you bought something that's going to be gone in like 2 bites. Oh, I deserve it. No, you don't. You work for 2 hours. Yeah, you work for 2 hours, and I had to watch you the whole time, because if I don't watch you, you disappear. You don't deserve Haagen-Dazs. I don't buy Haagen-Dazs, and I have lots of money, and I still buy Kroger's. But you can't. You see, we're all in the same position. So, and anybody that has a solution, let me know. Okay, I've gone on too long again. Where are we here? So anyway, if anybody has a suggestion on something that's a little more benign that you want to hear about, let me know. Time for the offering. And once again, guilt or no guilt, I'm putting money in the offering plate, and we always supply money for fish. And I told you, I took them over to fish. They got a ham for Christmas, and 2 weeks later they threw the ham away. They never even cooked it, never ate it, didn't even feed it to their freaking dog. The $12 ham they threw away. When you don't work for anything and people give you stuff, you don't appreciate it. I'm not anti-conservative. I don't tell people that you can't believe that, you can't say that's a fact, but the answer is you don't not give people hams anymore. You figure out a way to give them a ham and make sure they eat it. So you just don't say they don't deserve a ham, so they're going to starve. Because I'm sure some of those people who got Christmas hams enjoyed a Christmas ham. These two girls didn't. So, all right, put something in the plate if you have something. It had to be you.
Grandchildren. A lot of crazy people.
Closing hymn is 44. We sing of golden mornings.
Thank you, sir.
Sing of hopes undaunted, of friendly ways and kind. That should be our motto. All right, extinguishing the chalice is be about the work. May we see all as it is, and may it all be as we see it. May we be the ones to make it as it should be. For if not us, who? If not now, when? This is answering the cry of justice with the work of peace. This is redeeming the pain of history with the grace of wisdom. This is the work we are called to do, and this is the call we answer now. To be the barrier and the bridge, to be the living embodiment of our principles, to be about the work of building the beloved community, to be a people of intention and a people of conscience. Our postlude is Time Goes By. Maybe Dolly will get a chance to visit Casablanca and go to Rick's.
Maybe.
Hope she'll get a picture.
Yeah.
We'll leave our last candle burning for Margaret, all the problems she's having, and for Cecil. We'll give Cecil a call and see how she's doing. But our best for Margaret and her problems. All right, our picture is someone between the horse's ears, and if you don't know where that is, that's the bridge across the Colorado River at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. This person rode their own private horse down to the bottom of the Grand Canyon on that trail, and I showed you pictures that only the Park Service only uses mules because mules are not stupid. Mules, if a little plastic bag blows up in front of them, they won't jump off into space and kill themselves or jump in front of a car. If a squirrel or a stick looks funny on the ground, they won't rear up and turn around and run the other direction. I can't imagine riding a saddle horse to the bottom of the Grand Canyon. Look at this bridge. You can't turn around. Once you start going, you're going to have to go completely all the way across.
How old is that bridge? You have any idea?
That bridge was built in the 30s by the CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps, when they were redoing the Grand Canyon. I'm sure it's been updated. I mean, they just don't build it and let it go. So I'm sure the bridge is safe, but I'd be nervous on that bridge, on a mule even. So to ride your own horse, that's just astounding to me. So, all right, $5 donuts this week. So the donuts are actually fresh. They're from Friday, so they're only a day old. So enjoy the donuts, and Paula brought coffee, so we can have a nice talk afterwards.
Thanks, enjoy it.
This was not an easy one. I like these girls as people. They're evil. I mean, they break into a guy who's helped them out and done them favors and they store food in his refrigerator and his freezer, break into his house, and bad enough break in the window, but kick the door in, break the door jam.
I wouldn't tolerate it.
Well, how can you? The thing is, that's what the sheriff said, kick them out. And I said, they don't have a place to go. What am I going to do? The problem is, they're stupid. They left their clothes in the washer and the dryer. If you broke into someplace, would you leave your burglar tools out of my truck there?
Or they didn't do that on purpose to return.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
It doesn't make any sense. I mean, if they would have broken in, did their laundry and took their laundry home, nobody would have really known other than the busted up door.
Doesn't that make the interest point? That they're dumbass people, I mean, can't.
Yeah, but they're smart enough to figure out how to break in. And they're smart enough to figure out how to cheat people. They're smart enough to know how to